And we're in a new place. Yes, I moved. This is the new setup, at least for now. So let's get into it. Hello and welcome back. This week I'm excited because I'm finally getting around to many of my TBR list. First of which is Michael Connelly's The Law of Innocence. Somewhat ironically, my lawyer uncle gave this to me for a Christmas gift, and it's just taken me a while to get around to it. The funny thing, and I've said this before, is that I seem to always forget that I like kind of mystery type stories, which is actually really funny because I love some cop shows, especially funny ones or really complicated, intricate ones like Love Psych, definitely up there. Really enjoyed some of Criminal Minds. I really liked the short run, not so much cop show, but legal show For the People. Shockingly, I'm not big on Law and Order, but that's mostly just because I haven't seen a whole lot of it. Anyway, I digress. This is kind of the best of all of those, plus a little bit of like true crime. Not necessarily because it's based on a true story, like actually Brenda Lynn's book Sister Lost from a while ago, but because it's just very realistic, at least as far as I can tell. And some of that realism comes from the details sprinkled throughout the book. For example, the main character Mickey, before I get into like the plot, he makes a few comments about seeing news reports of some mysterious pandemic that's gripping Wuhan, China. And it's like, oh, well, we totally know what that is. Or it's the president and his impeachment trial. I don't remember exactly if Mickey makes that exact observation, but that's kind of the general gist. So I really, really like that Connelly included those little real life newsworthy events in this story, just because I felt like it gave a fuller sense of realism and depth to this world, because it takes place in California. So obviously people who have been in California like know the area. So I think it's just always a little bit fun when writers give that extra little added element of realism. So The Law of Innocence. It follows, as I mentioned, Mickey Haller, and he is a defense attorney. He gets a big win. As he's driving off, he gets pulled over by a cop. The cop says that he's missing a license plate, which is apparently kind of silly because he has the front license plate. So, you know, some legal stuff that I don't fully understand. Just because those sorts of things vary from state to state. For example, in Colorado, you have to have a front license plate. Anyway, I digress. In the course of the not so routine being pulled over, it's discovered that there is a dead body in the back of Mickey's vehicle. And it's not just any dead body, it's a former client. So Mickey gets arrested on murder charges. It's a whole big thing. And now he has the biggest case of his life because he's literally defending himself against life imprisonment. So that's kind of the super long story short. I really, really enjoyed this book. I flew through it. You can see it's kind of thick. My copy here is just over 400 pages. But I flew through because, as I said earlier, it's so detailed. It's a very well thought out plot in terms of characters, motive, etc., etc., etc. I also think that the characters themselves are just very detailed because, as per usual, I don't think this is the first of the Mickey Haller books because it even says on the cover, a Lincoln Lawyer novel. But I felt as though I got a really clear sense of who Mickey was, even without that added context of these other Lincoln Lawyer novels. I thought he was a really well-developed character. I loved seeing him, especially in courtroom scenes, just because he was so compelling and charismatic. And when he needed to be aggressive, he was aggressive. And when he needed to be kind of aloof, he was. It was just so interesting to see these tactics that it was so interesting to read about a character doing these sorts of tactics that you normally see in television, whether that's fiction television or real television. Just kind of like we saw with, for example, the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial this past summer. There were just moments where reading the book, especially in those trial scenes, where it was like, oh my gosh, I could totally see that happening. That seems incredibly realistic and incredibly fascinating, the way that it's being described. I also really liked the character-to-character relationships. There is kind of a large cast of characters, so I won't get into all of them, but some that stuck out to me were Dana Berg, who is the prosecuting attorney, and she has the reputation of being a hard person, a very cold person. That's why she has the nickname of Iceberg, because she always goes after like the maximum sentencing and she doesn't back down. And unfortunately for Mickey, she's a true believer. She really thinks that he murdered his former client, which I thought just gave her so much more depth in kind of an unexpected way, just because it really made her kind of a foil of pretty much all of the other characters. Because other than Berg, the only person where it's like super, as a reader, I was super confident that they didn't believe Mickey was the detective who was working with Berg. I also really, really liked the judge. I thought it was super cool that Connolly decided that she would have experience as a defense attorney in the past, because it just made those character relationships, especially between that triangle of Berg, Mickey, and the defense attorney, the judge, so much more complicated, because basically Mickey's like, Berg is obstructing my investigation, and Berg is like, you have a clear favorite, and Judge Warfield is just like not here for any of that. She's a no-nonsense judge, and I just really, really liked her character. There's also a little bit of romance for those of you out there, if you're like myself and love that. There's a few little instances. There's one with an ex-girlfriend and one with someone else who I do not want to give away too many spoilers, because that one I didn't immediately see coming, especially because the character was kind of only mentioned in the first half and she really didn't come into play until later on in the story. And so I thought that the way that Connolly approached that romance was just really sweet, and it was just really satisfying, especially given everything that happened during the case. By the way, the case is also just absolutely fun and engaging to read, because obviously as a reader, we know that Mickey didn't do it. Obviously as a reader, we know that Berg and her attorney buddy don't have the whole story and are kind of just like cherry picking the evidence to fit their case. But it's so cool to see how there are underlying details that Mickey and his team either don't know right away or just don't know at all. And as a reader, we don't necessarily know all of those details either, but it was just so fun to see the way that the case evolved, because I don't know, there was a point where I was probably about like this far into the book and I'm like, I'm running out of book. They have to prove him innocent. He can't go to jail for this. And so the way that Connolly wrapped it up, I thought was just really, really interesting, and it made the epilogue that much more compelling, I thought. So overall, I 100% recommend The Law of Innocence by Michael Connolly. I think this is perfect for people who like mystery, like crime, like legal stuff. There is a little bit of I'm gonna say pseudo adult content, just because yes, there was a murder, yes, there's romance, and so there's like kind of allusion, well, there's not kind of allusions to sex, there are allusions to sex, but it's like, and we made love and it was really nice. You know, it's very low key and it's not super detailed, and even the details of the murder are pretty basic, like he was shot, ta-da. So I don't think that either of those things are too much of a red flag that should deter you from the book. I don't think there's really a whole lot of swearing either, and I think those are usually the things that stick out to me in terms of red flags. So I think that this honestly has a really great potential to appeal to a lot of readers, and I hope that you take a look and enjoy it as much as I did. So that's all I have for The Law of Innocence. Next week, I'm going back to some more of my TBR list with The Paris Wife by Paula McLean. Very excited about this one because it's a history reimagined, and I always love those. So I will see you next week with that, and in the meantime, happy reading and thanks.